SJ Stongo, Gary Fife, Jaho Jifkados, Mvskoke Radio, Mabo Hedgeta Wedskis. Okay, here we are in a rainy, miserable Mogi morning, and we've got all kinds of fun with some illness here among staff members at the station. So we pretty much had to fly this by the seat of your pants. Nothing like live radio. Excuse me there. We have a couple of things we'll be sharing with you this morning. First of all, we'll be speaking with staff member from the U.S. Census Bureau to find out how we're doing here in Oklahoma as far as the count. And in our second segment, with the recent passage of the Freedom of the Press Act, we will have our National Council representative, Mark Randolph, coming in, and our managing editor, Rita Courtwright, sitting in. So we'll have a discussion of what that bill does, what it means to us, and other wonderful things like that. But let's get started here before the weather and this virus does anything else to us. Good morning, Mr. Tipaconic. Are you with me, sir?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Okay. For the benefit of our listeners, will you give us a real quick idea of who you are and what agency you're with there, sir?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Charles Tipaconic. I am a tribal partnership specialist with the United States Census Bureau. I am also a member of the Comanche Nation, and I live here in Elgin, Oklahoma, which is in Comanche County, southwest part of the state. And I just want to thank you, Gary, for allowing us to be here today and to talk about the census.
Well, great. We've seen quite a campaign this year, as opposed to 10 years ago. We've seen a lot of highly produced television commercials and notices popping up all the time. Tell me, did the agency, Census Bureau, consciously ramp this up and put more money and effort into it this year?
Oh, definitely. We're trying to get the word out, especially now during this pandemic, that the safest way to respond to the census is either online at 2020census.gov or by using our toll-free 800 number, which is 844-330-2020, or we mailed out a paper form to a large number of households that you can return in our postage-paid mailer. So in 2020, this year, for the first time, the census is allowing households to respond online. So that is a first. And so that has been a message that we have been, that you have seen subsequently since the last 2010 when it was not available. So yes, that messaging has gone out, and it's been over the major airwaves, Facebook, all social media. So we encourage everyone to respond, and the safest way to respond right now is online or by telephone.
Now that you bring that up, has it made any difference this year with everyone really leery of getting into crowds and intermixing with each other in person or through some sort of mail whatever distribution? I mean, have you noticed a difference there? People coming online, people just like it, or what have you heard?
Well, at our website, which is located at 2020census.gov, we have a response rate map, which you can go online, and this map is updated on a daily basis, and you can see anywhere in the United States, including here in Oklahoma, in any town, any county, you can see what the response rate is right now. Presently, throughout the United States, 62% of households have responded thus far. Here in Oklahoma, we're lagging a little bit behind the national rate. We're currently at 57%. So that 62% national rate is of 62% of over 300 million people that were counted in the last census, or that corresponds to about 150 million households.
Now, those figures reflect a national count, or is it you talking Oklahoma here?
here in Oklahoma, we have a population of around 3 million. After this 2020 census, I'm sure that will increase. In Oklahoma, of that 3 million, we have about 1.5 million households. I want everyone to remember that the 2020 census is a survey about households. It's not an individual survey that's mailed out to everyone individually, but rather a survey that's mailed out to each household that we have an address for. And whoever fills that out fills the information out for each individual in that household.
So you send one form to a house, and it's up to the occupants there to include themselves and any children, right?
Yes, we want to emphasize that it's very important to include everyone in the household, relatives, non-relatives, everyone that stays in that household as of April 1st, which was Census Day. We want to have that correct count.
The reason for doing this has been discussed a little bit, but I think it's worth mentioning again. So perhaps you could give me a little capsule of why it's so important for people to respond.
Sure, it's part of our government. Why do we do a census? It is in our Constitution that a census be completed every 10 years. The Founding Fathers, when they created our government, they wanted to make sure that we were fairly represented in all aspects of government. And so a census was first completed in 1790, and it has been completed every 10 years since. Here in 2020, this will be our 24th time to do a census. Now, the government uses the population count to determine the numbers of seats each state has in the House of Representatives. Currently, Oklahoma has 5 seats in the House of Representatives, and that is based on our population, which comes from the census. Texas, our neighbor to the south, because of their larger population, they have 36 seats in the House of Representatives. So we do a census mainly for a count, and it's a count to make sure that we are fairly represented in Congress. But even more important for natives and local communities and local governments, including tribal governments, is most federal agencies use the census and use the data that's collected from the census to fund tribal governments, to fund local governments, to fund communities, to fund service programs in all our areas. So the two main reasons why it's important is for our representation in Congress, but on a local level, it's just as important for our funding that we get for all our community services.
Now, in past counts, there was some criticism that the census had severely undercounted the number of Native Americans, and I guess we were partially responsible for that. But have you known that to be true, and have things improved since 10, 20 years ago?
It's very true. We as Native people have an inherent mistrust of the federal government. It's just part of our history. And so that's why the Census Bureau has hired myself, and we have another tribal partnership specialist here in Oklahoma. Her name is Brenda Claw. And our job is to work directly with the tribal governments here in Oklahoma. As you know, there are 39 different tribal governments headquartered here in Oklahoma. And all minority groups, including Native Americans, have historically been undercounted in every census. And that affects us in our daily lives. It affects our tribal governments. It affects our funding. It affects our community services. So the Census Bureau has hired people like me to work directly with minority groups. I work directly with American Indians to help this issue of undercount. So yes, it is a inherent mistrust of the federal government that is still prevalent today. And so our job as tribal government specialists is to partner with tribal government, community leaders, tribal trusted voices, what we like to call, that our Indian people will listen to because it's an education process. You have to know what the census is about. The more you know what the census is, the less you'll fear it, is our hope. And so it's an education process that we have to partner with tribes to get that message out to all our tribal members.
Okay, let's talk about how we're doing so far. Now, a couple of questions here. First of all, as I say, how are we doing? Have you got any indication at all how tribes are responding? And when might we see a final count for the numbers of Native people here in Oklahoma?
Okay, because of the COVID-19 virus, the Census Bureau has delayed most of our operations. At the end of July, we were supposed to have the census completed according to our original schedule. But in mid-March, as you well know, the virus hit, and we had to shut down or delay most of our major operations as tribal governments shut down, as a lot of government activities and projects shut down. So we have delayed our operations. We are now allowing the census to be completed up until the end of October 31st. So that allows us a couple extra months to get people to respond to the census. And most importantly, it helps our Native American tribal members an extra time to respond and learn more about the census. So as far as compared to previous census, we are doing a little better here in Oklahoma. We won't know exactly the tribal counts or the tribal response rates until after the census has been completed. Here in Oklahoma, we really don't have reservation-based lands like they do out west, and so the response rates aren't able to identify the tribal populations until after the census is completed here in Oklahoma. So that will be after October 31st until we can find out exactly how the tribes responded.
Do you have any sense or perhaps any feel? Has you and your partner there been a little busier? Just give you some sort of indication of how the tribes are responding? I mean, are they paying attention and coming on board, do you think?
Well, it's just like anything else. Some of the tribes have been really active. Some of the tribes have been less active. But in your area, the 5 civilized tribes have been very active in getting the word out in outreach efforts, and have set up what we call complete count committees, where they have assigned people throughout the government that had different programs to sit on this committee. Each program already has outreach efforts for their services, and so we combine the information that we give them from the census, and they use that, and we funnel it through the tribal government, and hopefully it gets out to the tribal members through newsletters, Facebook pages, any kind of social media that the tribe also uses. And so, yes, there are some tribes doing really well with the census, and there's some tribes that are doing not as well. There are some areas in Oklahoma that are doing really well in the central part of Oklahoma, in Oklahoma County, Tulsa County. The large urban areas are doing a little bit better than the rural areas. We have Indians living throughout Oklahoma. All tribes don't live just in one place. So we look at the counties in Oklahoma. And out of the 72 counties, there are some that are doing good, are above or near the national level, and then there are some that are up at the 20% level.
Let me ask you a question about that process. Now, you've said several times a lot of our people do live in rural areas, and of course that means dirt roads and muddy roads sometimes, and hard to locate places. Has the Census Bureau taken any special actions to try and deal with that challenge?
Yes, we have different operations to deal with some of those issues. I'll take a minute just to talk about some of our operations. So beginning last year, in 2019, we did what we call address canvassing as an operation, where we collected all the known households' addresses that we could find using many partners like the post office that has a database. So we built a database of all the known households that we could, and we used this to start getting the message out and knowing where to go to get the complete census count. So that was called address canvassing. So in mid-March of this year, 2020, we allowed everyone to go online and complete the census online or use the toll-free number, as I mentioned before. And to do that, we sent out postcards with identification numbers for each household that you could use when you fill out the census. When you go to 2020census.gov online, it'll ask you for your ID number, and you can use that ID number, which links directly to your household address, and complete the census. Now, if you don't have that identification number, you can still complete the census. There's a tab right below there. It says, I don't have my ID number, and it will still allow you to complete the census.
Okay,
but,
let me
like
ask you, we're kind of winding down here, but let me ask you kind of a silly question. The reservations across the nation often have unnamed roads and unnumbered residences. It's sort of like, well, you go down there with a big tree with a fork in it and you turn left and go down, that kind of thing. And then, of course, there are the famous Indian dogs who hang out on the front porch and kind of get protective. Now, those are two unusual kinds of things. Have your people been trained to deal with that sort of thing?
Yes. That is an operation what we call Update Leave. Update Leave operation, we have field staff that go out and deliver packets of census information, which includes your identification number, also a paper form of the census, to people that live in rural areas, to people that have non-city style addresses, to people that live on rural routes or only use P.O. boxes for their address. So we completed that operation here in Oklahoma in May, end of May. And so to all the people that we knew that had non-city style addresses, we had field staff go out and deliver the census information to their doorstep. They were, of course, during this time using PPE and maintain social distance as we are required to do. No formal contact was made to any member of the household. Now, I would like to remind everyone, starting August 11th, we actually begin our door-to-door operation for all households that have not yet answered the census. So we will have field staff going door-to-door, conducting interviews, completing the census with you face-to-face if you have not yet responded. So we encourage everyone, please respond now the most safest way possible, online, by telephone, or through the mail.
Okay, and we're hoping that people will take the time to respond, that your folks are going to be safe and watched over during the completion of their rounds. And we'll ask people with those mean Indian dogs to put them in the backyard.
Yes, and we try to hire the people that go door to door, our field staff. We put an emphasis on hiring locally. And so we want people that know the neighborhoods, that are from that neighborhood, doing that work. So hopefully they'll know about some of these dangers and some of these issues. Another thing I need to highlight, I don't know how much time we have.
Well, we're wrapping it up, so make it quick.
Okay. It is very important for tribal members when completing the census to complete it accurately. And by accurately, I mean there is a race question. We want you to answer that you are American Indian or Alaska Native. Right below the race question, there is a tribal affiliation question. Please put down, in your case, Mvskoke Creek Nation, for the Mvskoke Creek Nation tribal members. Why is this important? Because in many instances in Oklahoma, there's tribes that have similar names for tribes here in Oklahoma, and then there's tribes with that same name elsewhere. For example, the Seminole tribe, the Seminole Nation here in Oklahoma, there is a Seminole tribe in Florida. So to be correctly counted, we want the Seminole the Seminole Nation tribal members here in Oklahoma to put down Seminole Nation. So that is imperative that we put down the correct federally recognized name of each tribe that you are a member of or assume affiliation with.
Okay.
You do not have to have a CDIB to be included on the census.
Okay.
If you feel you are affiliated with the tribe,
it should be a matter of pride, I think, for people to declare that, yes, I am a member of this nation, and I'm proud to let the world know. All right, Mr. Tipiconic, if someone had any questions, how do they get in touch with you?
Yep. My name is Charles Tipiconic, and I can be reached at Charles.Tipiconic at 2020census.gov. That is my email address.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Wish you the best of success with this count. I know you're doing it for us, and we appreciate it. And hope you can avoid this ridiculous and mean virus that's kicking around. Okay, Mado.
Thank you, and appreciate the time.
All right. That's Charles Tipiconic with the U.S. Census Bureau, taking count of all the Indians in the country. We're going to take a short pause here, and then we'll be back at our second segment, and the issue will be freedom of the press and the law that just recently got passed. So please stay with us here on Mvskoke Radio on the Brew.
Who am I? Am I Indian? Just 'cause I'm a girl from the res, don't make things up about me. What if I move away? Then who am I? Some kids try meth just to escape, but then I think about my grandma, my little brother, my beadwork, my poetry, and I think, I like who I am, and I know meth is not for me.
Check out ncai.org, a message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Welcome back to Mvskoke Radio here on the Brew. We're all donned our masks here as we interact socially. We'd like to welcome Mr. Randolph here. Let's see. Actually, I wrote down all this cool stuff about you. Now I have dropped it. Let's see. And our managing editor and La Bossa, Rita, Courtwright's here setting in to talk us a question. So first of all, thank you so much, Mr. Randolph, for coming in. We appreciate you making time for us.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, now we're here to talk about freedom of the press, something we've been beating the bushes for years now. And we finally see some success, and we hope that it will stay. We won't have any nasty surprises down the road here. But first of all, Mr. Randolph, you took this issue again to the National Council for them to reconsider and to voice their opinions on. Now, first of all, I guess let's start there. You know, why was this important for you to bring it up again?
It was important.
Yeah, you're good.
It was important for us to accomplish what we wanted. Last session, we kind of played tennis with it. We went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And at one point, I felt like it was becoming kind of a mockery. And so I waited this session for a while, and it weighed on my mind, and I thought, I'm just going to bring it back forward. I waited till a good time. I think it was, timing's everything. And so it was a good time. I think the rest of the council, knew we had to have freedom of press. And I think the most important thing is that it be returned back to its independent status. That I think that's the key right there.
Mm-hmm. Rita, the council members said, of course, they played tennis with us back and forth, and we saw the wear and tear on our people. What did you see as trying to run this operation and keep the products going out and keep from going insane at the same time?
It's definitely been a challenging year and a half, past year and a half that we've been without free press. But luckily, council members such as Representative Randolph have been really instrumental in helping us push this forward. I know it's been trying on employees not knowing what's going to happen from day to day, but I feel like we've come up with the best solution here with this legislation that was just passed, and I'm very eager to start moving forward with free press and being able to lift some of that weight up off of our shoulders about what's going to happen to us. We don't feel like we're as in limbo as maybe we once were.
Right. I know that our crew was feeling pretty down.
Yeah.
And at one point, we actually, I think 7 of us, one of our people called us the Magnificent Seven, had sat around in the lobby to commiserate and wonder whether or not we would have jobs or whether or not Light Horse would be escorting us out the door.
Right.
That didn't happen. We did have calls for support from several people. But let's take a look at the main question here, freedom of the press. And let's start with you, Mr. Randolph. Why is that so important?
I believe freedom of the press is extremely important for to keep our citizens informed in a format that's unbiased, that the Mvskoke media and all the reporters are able to do their job without the fear of retaliation or censorship or any type of control or power. And so I think for them to effectively report the news and keep our citizens informed and provide transparency, that's what I see as being extremely important.
Now, the word transparency has got to be critical there, which means that it's transparent. You can see everything, the
Right.
good and the bad. Now, again, address that part of it, seeing, I guess, the bad.
Well, transparency to me is like standing by the water and being able to look in and you can see everything. And I think that's critical for citizens. All of our people are shareholders, they're stakeholders. And so they should be updated. They should know everything that's going on with finances, with services, anything, that's really relevant and newsworthy for the nation, that needs to be reported. And so I think this format lays that out.
Now, I see we have a visit from law enforcement going on. No, it's an ambulance. Over the studio here, sitting right out on Main Street, we're going to have to run into that from time to time. Now, Rita, let me toss that same question to you. Why is it so important? I mean, it's been a battle, and it's been costly, but...
Absolutely. When I first came into the position as managing editor of Mvskoke Media, I had come into Mvskoke Media excited for a change. I came from the College of Mvskoke Nation, and I was excited to be part of something that was bigger than me, and being able to get that information out to all of our citizens, being part of a free press organization, being able to write about what's going on within our tribe. These were all exciting times, but then again, that excitement only lasted for me about 3 weeks, and then free press was repealed, and I was just kind of floundering for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Well, you floundered pretty well, I'd say, and kept us going. Now, I've been at this business for over 40 years, and I've seen the question come up decades ago. The criticisms were that any sort of media outlet owned by a tribe was run by that tribe, and it had various tribal leaders that exercised, shall we say, that option quite strongly. Council members, put pressure on us, and I remember hearing people saying, well, I could lose my job. And for people who are pretty hard to find, employment, that's a real threat. And so a lot of things that, we personally might have had a problem with, we had to deal with and kind of paint a rosy picture. Now, that's my experience bouncing around the country and finally coming home here. Would you say that was accurate from your experience, Rita?
Absolutely. Yeah, just the feeling of the unknown was the most difficult thing to have to deal with, again, coming in every day and just not knowing where Mvskoke media stood within the whole layout view of the tribe. So it was, again, very challenging. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of stress. It put a lot of stress on everybody, but I feel, again, more confident that we're going to be able to move forward now that we have this new legislation in place.
Okay, Mr. Randolph, what are your thoughts on that question?
What was the question again?
That was kind of a history of, well, most of the words that I'm thinking of I probably can't say on air, but of people thinking that this is my paper. I can do any darn thing I want with it, or the TV show, or the radio program. And if I don't like it, they ain't going to do it, or they ain't going to have a job. Now, as I say, I've seen that in different places around the country, and my colleagues have related those experiences. But as a council member, what are your thoughts on that kind of situation?
You know, what it reminds me of is when I was going to school at high school in Nation University back in 1988, and I worked on the paper there, and our paper had been silenced for 5 years because it was being censored by the staff. And we wanted a student paper that just voiced, you know, the students' voice, what was going on in campus, how they wanted to write articles, how they wanted to express the news they wanted to give out. And so when I came here, I was thinking a lot of these things that seem to plague Native entities, whether it be nations, colleges, you know, just to see that once again they were like, our media was being held captive, and you can't really do what you want to do or what all you have the potential to do. And so one of the things I'm glad and thankful for Ms. Courtwright and the Mvskoke media folks is when we started talking about all this, we addressed their input. I think prior to that, it was more or less representatives of the council and representatives of the executive branch that came together and discussed and put things in place, but never with the input of the Mvskoke media themselves. And so I'm happy that as a council person, we were able to invite them to the table and say, you know, how does this look for you all? What do you need? You know, what are your biggest issues, and how can we help you?
Okay, let's take a second and look at the legislation that was just passed. Perhaps you can hit on a couple of the more important clauses contained in the piece.
And while he looks at that, I just want to kind of interject something. I also have to say that it was also the support of the current administration. Principal Chief David Hill, Vice Chief, Second Chief, Del Beaver, you know, they've been very supportive in helping us to move along free press. So again, without that kind of support along with the National Council, I don't think we'd be here today.
Right, now while we're on that subject and he's pulling, the Principal Chief before Mr. Hill, James Floyd, always had seemed to be supportive of what we were doing and our principles, but then he ended up refusing to sign the thing. And the excuse was some of the commercial activity we were supposedly engaged in that we actually had to. So it's been a kind of an up and down roller coaster as far as tribal chiefs and supporting us.
That's right. It has. And, you know, and it's not even just that. I mean, again, there was even National Council people at the time, reps who had said at one point, I remember hearing one say, you know, I'm tired of reading the negative news. And I hate for Mvskoke news to be portrayed in that light. It's not just about the negative news. It's about information that is going to be important to the citizens to know.
Right. Now, while we're mentioning those chiefs, the one before Mr. Floyd actually sent us some emails saying, you cannot do this story. No one is supposed to talk about this story except my PR guy. And just really came down hard on us there. And, you know, we're going, oh my God, now what? We feel a responsibility to cover this story, but yet we've been ordered not to. But luckily that's in the past.
Mr. Fife, that's something that's addressed here in the Mvskoke media. Says the Mvskoke Creek Nation's press, Mvskoke media, shall be independent from any undue influence and free of any particular political interest. It is the duty of the press to report the Mvskoke Creek Nation and its people without bias, to have an informed citizenry.
All right. The chance now to kind of breathe freely is really a welcome to our people. I mean, some of my headaches are gone. I never really felt like anyone was going to lean on me for this show, and if they did, I'd kind of bark back at them and see where we landed. But now we're moving along to try and cover some of the gaps. Now, while we're still dealing with the past, I attended one of the committee meetings where the objections were first raised and the proposition was shot down. And I remember one of the council members saying exactly what you did. We're tired of seeing all this negative press. Well, that was stuff that had been log jammed for a long time. I mean, finances and cronyism and a couple of other isms there that I'm sure that people can figure out for themselves. But he said, it's nothing personal. But then I was thinking to myself, how can it not be personal? I mean, you don't want the bad news, the dirty laundry. That's news. We didn't make those stories. You guys did, and if we report them, then maybe you shouldn't have done them in the first place. Anyway, that's my roundabout thinking of it. Now, did that sort of feeling ever prevail in some of the discussions that you were having with some of those folks?
For me, I felt like that was just a surface issue. I think that was something when they were being interviewed and saying, why should we take away freedom of press, and they were saying that. To me, it was all political. Mm. To me, it wasn't necessarily just about negative or positive news. It was saying, don't report this about so-and-so, but you can report this about so-and-so. I think it had to do with who the negative connotations were about more than anything else. And I think it was just a way of saying, we will censor you. You will be censored, mm-hmm. So don't step over the line. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that was just like kind of superficial, just talk on the top. But there was a lot more to the depth of the issues.
Yeah, this was politically acceptable in the public arena, mm-hmm. right? Rita, do you remember that particular period? This mask is getting me.
Yeah, I do. And as a journalist, too, you always remember that you go into the field of journalism to always report the truth, and to be as truthful and honest and as credible as you can. So that's the goal of Mvskoke News is to try to move more in that direction, because inevitably we work for the citizens. We want the citizens to know what they think is important or what they should know, and if they have issues that they'd like to see addressed, we hope that they reach out to us and talk to us about those so that we can do some investigative reporting or some reporting to move those issues along. Just to keep things on a transparent basis, like Representative Randolph had mentioned earlier.
Let me toss this one out to both of you. Is there a line that we cannot cross still, or is that pretty much eliminated?
For me,
them both at the same time.
Yeah, for me, I think we still have the goal of getting a constitutional amendment that would allow freedom of press to be added to our Constitution. I think this is great where we're at. It's but it's not the end. I believe until that's put in place, somebody could always do legislation and come and repeal it again. Mm-hmm. And we could go right back where we were before.
Yeah, one more time.
Yeah.
And is working for the citizens. I think it does need to go to a vote of the citizens. Let them decide about a constitutional change to allow Mvskoke Media to be able to stand on its own as an independent free press organization.
All right, and the original question, is there a line that we can or cannot cross, do you think?
You're going to put me on the spot, Gary. I don't know. I'm still learning this,
I don't get to do this very often.
I'm still kind of learning where I can go. Because in the past year and a half, I've just seen the whole gamut round of what we could do and what we couldn't do and what we can do. And now that we have this free reign for just a little while, I hope forever, it's just like, wow, where do I go from here? I've been it's been so stifled, it seems like, for the past year and a half, that now that we have this freedom, you just have to take a breath and think, okay, one foot in front of the other. Where are we going to go?
All right. Well, let me ask you that same question in this fashion.
Okay.
Ethical standards. As a journalist, as a professional, what would be the standards that we would observe in covering stories?
I think I said that previous, but I think it's all about being trustworthy. You have to be trustworthy, and you have to report the news. Not all the news is going to be shed a positive light on things, And, that's just understandable for any kind of news outlet. But as long as you are clear, you've done the research, you have got all of the information that you need to report the story accurately and in a timely manner, I think that you start building credibility and you start building like a ethical confidence, I guess, if that's a word, if that's a way to phrase that, within your organization and then with the citizens who you serve.
Mr. Randolph, sort of the same question. What would you expect then from Mvskoke Media in conducting its professional business, and when you work with a reporter? I mean, what would you expect?
I would expect consistency and fairness. I think what's good is for the goose is good for the gander. I think if you're going to report certain things that might be received as negative, well, that should go across the board, as well as the positive. I think, a newspaper is all about reporting the news, and like we said before, some is negative and some is positive, but to provide transparency, you're going to be able to see both, and in a balanced and a consistent and a fair way, to where I think if you're going to report this about one person and maybe even dive into their personal lives, then be consistent. Don't pick and choose. Don't become biased yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Well, when dealing with personal issues, I know this is really pretty tricky here. There are times when we have to, because of the person's position, their prominence, their recognition by the community. And you don't want to do that. You wish it didn't happen, but you still got to do it anyway. Say if someone was caught with their fingers in the till or something in their personal life that was kind of nasty. How would we handle that? What do you want to see when a reporter turns in a piece, Rita?
You just want to make sure that the research has been done and that both sides of the story are covered. Every story usually has two sides, should always have two sides, not usually. It should always have two sides, and both sides of the story need to be covered. The good with the bad. So, again, that's what helps build your credibility as a news organization.
Mr. Randolph, what do you think there when you read something in the paper or see it on our TV show or Mvskoke Radio? What do you expect?
I would just expect, like I was saying, just consistency, clarity, due diligence, and you always want to give somebody a right to speak to their own issues, I think also,
Yes.
and so, I'm just looking forward to seeing a paper to where I know it's not being censored, where I know there's no restrictions, where people aren't fearing retaliation and saying, oh, I can't really put that out there. And I think what's been created without freedom of press, we have a lot of things that come across Facebook and social media that isn't always necessarily correct information. Mm-hmm. And I think if the paper is able to do their job, or the media and their different ways of getting out the news, we won't have to do all these other things. Even myself, at one time, there's a lot of things I put on Facebook because that's the only way I could get it out to the people. And now I see the media they should have been the ones, from the very beginning. And so now they're taking, forefront on the stage again and saying, we're going to be able to say and report and, here's what's going on. And so I think other people will be able to sit back and let y'all do your job.
One of the jobs we're doing has been generation of our own revenue. And we've done it through marketing and the gift shops and the banners and things that are being produced. Now, that was one point of contention, and not too distant past, people say, well, what are these people doing with all this money? And I don't think most of our citizens actually knew what we're talking about there. So perhaps you could take a second there, Rita, and kind of clarify that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. You know, Mvskoke Media is not just Mvskoke News. It's not just Mvskoke Vision or Mvskoke Radio. There's also other key components that I'm very thankful that Representative Randolph included in this legislation to cover Mvskoke Creative. Mvskoke Creative is a portion of our Mvskoke Media as a whole that helps to generate revenue. We have a printing press in the back, or not a printing press, but a printing setup in the back. We can do banners, memorial folders, all different kinds of things for our citizens. These services are available to our citizens, not just our citizens, but also to anybody out in the general public who might want to get something printed. And then we have Mvskoke Business, and Mvskoke Business is comprised of right now we have two Mvskoke Markets, which is our gift shops, and that also helps to generate revenue for Mvskoke Media. And those gift shops are one is located in the Solomon McCombs building, and the other one is located in the inside of the Okima Hospital. So those have also been included in this legislation to remain part of Mvskoke Media, and I'm very thankful for that.
Mm-hmm. And here's a tip of the hat to those that crew there.
Absolutely,
done some
they're amazing staff.
Now, does that commercialization component create a problem for you, Mr. Randolph? Are you concerned at all with it being there or what it does?
No, sir, I'm not concerned at all. I have no concerns about it.
Oh, wonderful. You hear that, guys?
Yeah.
Now, as we kind of move along now, I think freedom of the press is in legislation. And at one point there was quite a discussion of a constitutional amendment for FOA, Freedom of Information Act, FOIA as it's known. Is that a dead issue? Is it still alive? Is it still something you may want to take a swing at, Mr. Randolph?
We'll see. You know, I don't. We've recently had bill number NCA 20-017, Freedom of Information Act, that was also passed the same night as Freedom of Press. They were kind of like sister bills. And so once we've got them in legislation, I think that's the natural step to start taking them toward, amendments to the Constitution. I don't know if I'll do it. I don't know if somebody else will jump on board. Right now, I'm just taking a little time to celebrate what we got.
Catch our breath here.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
Now, if we're successful there, what would that allow us to do, and perhaps any other Mvskoke citizen? The freedom of information. Would it give us enough leverage, you think, to get some of our rather stubborn administrators to release information? Would that apply to citizens? What's the discussion there?
For the bill?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's for any Mvskoke Creek citizen.
Okay.
They can put in a request, and it has to be a written request, and they have 20 days to fulfill it. There's an outline in this bill that will tell you, what you can add. There's some things, of course, that HIPAA covers and different confidentiality clauses, but the majority of everything, whether it be boards, communities, the tribal complex, all these things, finances, you can request those now, and they're to be posted. So.
Yeah, finance has always been the big sticky point.
Right. So, that's just another avenue, I believe, for transparency as far as, once again, the citizens being stakeholders in everything that goes on within the tribal nation, and the right to be able to look at any of this information.
What was the nature of any conversation you may have had with other council members regarding these issues? Was it positive? Was it negative? Did it kind of people just sort of wonder what was going on? I mean, what did you sense from your fellow council members?
Well, I kind of used the word transparency because we had just kind of came not too many months ago from a campaign, getting through the campaign. And sometimes I think we got to hold each other accountable and remind each other, we talked about transparency. Everybody said, they wanted to provide transparency. And so that was the key words I used with both of these bills. And I remember hearing a lot of people's platform, they said, we want to provide transparency, And so, this time I didn't feel any negativity. I was sharing with Ms. Courtwright. I was like, I believe it's going to pass. I don't feel anything. I don't, there wasn't no big fight. There was nothing going on behind the scenes. Nobody was, reacting in a negative way. And so that's why I felt like it was just good timing. But I believe just, reiterating the fact that we all said it when we were running for elected positions is, transparency. So.
Right. Now we're at that stage. Is there a sense of relief, you think? It gained enough support to be passed?
Yes. I believe all of us were able to believe, because I think a lot of times, even as council people, we're not always privy to all the information that's going on within the nation, but yet we're held accountable for it. Even ourselves. And there's been some things that have happened, throughout this new session, to where we had no input. We had, there was no transparency. And so I think we're all looking at it in a way to where, everything should include everyone, elected officials, the employees, and the citizens. We can't leave the citizens out. We got to remember that we are here to serve, the Mvskoke people. So.
Here's an odd question. Well, I've got you here. I'm going to work you. Some of the people still believe that we're being censored. I even had accusations this show was being censored, and no, it was operator error in most cases. But I still believe that council members have undue influence, or if the chief wanted to lean on us, he could do that. Is that real anymore? Do you think it at least diminished quite considerably?
Well, I would hope that it diminished quite considerably, and I would also think that change of any sort doesn't happen overnight, and a lot of people are going to look back and say, they've always done this. We've always been censored. They always use their seats or their political clout to get what they want, or
my cousin's on the council, and he'll get you for that.
That's right. Right. So I think it's something that with this new freedom that we have, that as it goes along, maybe people will buy into it more.
Well, we hope we can give them a product that they will indeed feel trustworthy. Rita, what was your reaction when you found out that this bill had gained support and was passed?
I was so thankful, just excited beyond belief. I was just thankful that not as for myself, but I was thankful as much, even more for the employees that I work with, my peers, because I knew that they would be relieved and they would be able to sleep a little better, and we could kind of move forward. But like Representative Randolph had mentioned earlier, we just have to make sure that this doesn't get repealed, that it remains the way it is, because I think we have a really good working method. We're going to get a board that'll get in there and be able to help us. Previous to this, the board had very limited access to what they could help us with. So I'm anxious to start working with the board and kind of getting input from them on what we can do to better our publication.
All right, well, I've got you on the spot. Where do we go from here now? Will this change anything in the way that Mvskoke media works, or are we on the right path to begin with?
I think we have been on the right path. We've been on the right path for at least the past 4 or 5 months. I think we can't go anywhere but up from here.
Okay. And collapse when it's done. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, Judge. And sort of the same question, Mr. Randolph. Now that we're at this stage, What would you then expect from the project coming out of this part of the tribe, or this group of people?
Well, I have nothing but great expectations, and I believe, as an optimist, that it's gonna be great. I believe that we're gonna produce not only a paper, but just whether it be social media, whatever you do. I think it's going to be outstanding. I think we're going to be forerunners for other tribal nations. I think other tribal nations are going to look at us and they're going to see this, and we're going to kind of be like a trendsetter. But what I do believe is when it did pass, for me, I was happy for Mvskoke Media, but the FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, and the freedom of press are victories for the Mvskoke people. I felt that, and it was a long time coming. It was interesting how it happened. Before, when it was during campaign season, that was quite the debate.
Right.
But this time, like I say, with the timing, it just kind of flowed and just went right on through.
All right.
So,
Now, Rita, the word trendsetter came out there. Now, we've already been contacted for how we did it and what's going on by other tribes.
Yeah, we have, and I'm glad to be looked at as somebody who might be actually setting a trend here. I couldn't think of anything better to be setting a trend for, but moving forward for free press within a tribal entity.
Now, this carries a lot of responsibility. It's a heavy load, burden to bear. What do you think then our Mvskoke citizens can expect from Mvskoke Media in carrying this responsibility?
Well, I hope that we can provide them the information that they're wanting to know about. I welcome the citizens to reach out to us. We have an email that comes to myself, which is info@mvskokemedia.com. I welcome input from citizens there. We take letters to the editor, opinions. I'm anxious to see what the citizens feel that they need for a newspaper to be successful, what they want, what kind of information they want to see, community calendars, things of that aspect I want to see. In our August 1st, if I can just drop a little thing, in our August 1st issue that's going to be coming out and you'll be getting in your mailboxes soon, we have a survey. If you could take that survey, it would help us immensely to try to be a better news organization for the citizens. So, and it'll only take just a few minutes for you to be able to complete that and mail it back to us, or you can take a picture of it and email it to that info@mvskokemedia.com, and we'd appreciate that information because it's only going to help us become better.
All right, in about the last minute or so that we've got left, any final thoughts you'd like to leave with our listeners, Mr. Randall?
I would just like to say, there's a lot of good things happening. Let's celebrate our victories. Let's move forward in a positive way, and let's look forward to the future.
No, Rita?
Meadow to the National Council and to Principal Chief David Hill and Second Chief Del Beaver for the support.
Right. Let's kick that up and make it 2,000 Meadows.
That's right.
Okay. Well, we want to thank you, Mr. Randolph, for coming in and sharing this with us. I know it's quite enlightening for our listeners and really, really uplifting for our staff members to know that we've got this kind of support. Rita, are you glad it's over there?
Yes, I am super excited.
Okay, me too. And I wasn't even there. Okay, well, we want to thank them both, and we'll toss one real quick message out here before we get out of here. The Mvskoke Nation Festival for 2020 has been canceled. No hopes of anything in the fall. We hope to see you next year. Stay safe and healthy. And that's from Creek Tourism and Recreation. And of course, my hat's off to those folks who are putting that sucker on every year. I'm sure they're taking a vacation, but we are missing that festival through none of our own fault, and we hope that they'll be able to get things going pretty quick here. Planning for next year, maybe it'll be bigger and better because of the extra time. Okay, well, we want to we want to get in touch with our listeners. If you've got an idea for the show or something like that, let us know. We don't promise anything now, no guarantees, but we do want to tell you that we will be very happy to consider it and kick it around in our editorial session. So, Mado Mabo Hedgetscut, we appreciate you listening. Thank you very much. Let's play this and we'll get out of here. You've been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Mado.
Birds and rocks and things, there was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met